for Margain's session. So I am delighted to welcome our two guests to our Tikkun Leil Shavuot, which is entitled, by the way, Shir LeShalom, a song for peace. I think that both Rabbi Igor and I wanted to focus a little bit on the land of Israel, on peace, both in a sort of practical way, reflecting, as we have done on each occasion of our festivals and on Shabbat, what happened on October the 7th. And we wanted to be able to sort of see those events through the prism of Shavuot. So our first speaker is Vadim Blumen, who is head of delegation to the UK and Western Europe. Vadim has a BA in International Relations, History and Jewish History from the Hebrew University, and an MA in Jewish History. He's an alumnus of the Vadim Program for Pluralism and Leadership. He was the founder and executive director of 1+1 Association of Immigrant Youth. And this role, apparently, got him a position as a contestant on the 2005 Israeli reality TV show, Wanted a Leader. Is that right?
That's not an official CD, but that's...
Well, I did my research. There are many things, maybe you'll add to this CV. Vadim speaks at various international conferences and events, including the 70 Faces of Israel event, the Rupin International Conference on Immigration and Social Integration. He's the co-author of the Commonwealth of Independent Tastes, Recollections and Recipes of Immigrants from the Former Soviet Union, which won the 2016 Gourmand World Cookbook Award. A man of many parts. Margain, I had the privilege of listening to you last Tuesday at the Yachad fundraising event, and I was so moved by the way that you spoke, your commitment to peace activism, work that you undertake intentionally in memory of your parents, Bilha and Yakovi Inon, who were both peace activists who were murdered on October the 7th by Hamas. Margain is a London-based Israeli father of three and a teacher who holds a PhD in philosophy of education. He was raised on the Moshav where both his parents lived, Nativ HaAsara, one of the closest Israeli villages to the Gaza Strip. And since October, he has been a prominent peace activist calling for a resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Please, first of all, welcome Vadim Blumen to speak.
Chag Sameach, good evening. I'm thrilled and honored to have this time and have a conversation. I want to thank the LGS for the invitation, and personally Rabbi Igor Zinkov. As you heard, I was born last century in a country no longer exists, the Soviet Union. Now, when you're a kid of 11 years old and you understand that countries can disappear, and not because of someone shooting missiles at them, but rather because something internal decays and collapses. And this was the largest country in the world, 15 time zones. So I guess in a way, when that happens when you're 11, it changes the way you see the world. And it seems to me that whatever I'm doing ever since, whether it's as a Jewish agency, head of delegation, or just as a, I don't know, human being, a Jew, an Israeli, I'm doing in order to make sure that this won't happen again, not in Israel. To quote Her Majesty, the late Queen, Annus Horribilis, right? Or Churchill, it does seem like this is our darkest hour. So while talking about Song for Peace, or being part of Tikkun Shavuot, I was reminded of this powerful Kabbalistic idea that we all present, I think, in mid-13th century, of the Tikkun, of the night before Shavuot. And that if we do believe that whatever is broken can be repaired, I'd like to suggest and share with you 3 personal stories and 1 question that I yet found the answer to. And I think we have 11 minutes to do that, right? All right. So 3 personal stories and 1 question I yet found the answer to, all right? Story number 1, now I am an Israeli. The year is 1990. The place is Dnipropetrovsk, don't try to say it. I'm 11 years old, and imagine we are at a train station. Now, I think every human being I've ever met until then in my life was there at the train station, and most of them were crying. Any thoughts? Why were they weeping? Why were they crying? We were leaving, yes. Leaving to Israel, exactly. But isn't that a happy thing, Aliyah and stuff, Zion? Anyhow, I think, going back, it's difficult for us to imagine a world not only without internet, but where communications and words and letters are dangerous. People in the former Soviet Union lost their jobs, were kicked out of schools and universities if they kept in contact with anyone, from the evil West. So I think we didn't know if we would ever see each other. Maybe I should explain. I always knew that I'm a Jew and we have a Jewish family, and moreover, being a Jew was quite exciting. I'll give you an example. I remember, it was my 5th grade. One day I came to my still primary school, and a friend of mine, Katya, secretly whispered, "Listen, you shouldn't come to the school tomorrow." It was curious. I asked her why, and she explained that her father and his friends are organizing a pogrom. I went back home, realized suddenly that my dad has a gun, which was surprising as well, as my dad is a mechanical engineer, and all his life, since I remembered, he worked at a radio factory. Now, anyone would like to guess what were they producing in radio factory? Disclaimer, not a radio. Ukrainian radio factory? Well, come on, what? Radars. What? Radars. Yeah, that would make sense, no? Bombs, missiles. Remember, this is going for the sequel, prequel, whatever. The Scud fell on Israel in the first Gulf War. My father produced them. He was sure they will never hit. They fell literally in the Sahara. But this is a different story. Anyhow, so Dad was cleaning his gun, and my baby sister back then, she was 3 years old, and there's those trolleys. So my mom was sharpening a butcher knife, which is a normal handle, but a wider blade, right? And they said, "No haters will keep us back home. You're going to the school tomorrow." I had the escort of both my mom and 3-year-old sister with a trolley with a hidden butcher knife. And I remember walking to the school in immense pride, imagining Mom taking the knife and slaughtering Cossacks. So you see, being a Jew was quite exciting. And I think months afterwards, they opened the first Jewish school in Dnipropetrovsk, and this blew my mind. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the principles of Soviet education, but I assure you that free choice is not one of them. So being able to choose a Hebrew name on the first day, I think I was one of the 2 geeks who literally called Mom and said, "Mom, is that okay? I'll take it." So I took another name. David, also redhead, playing violin, a bit tendency to megalomania, and other similarities. And then we were allowed to ask questions and to argue with a teacher. So naturally, when we arrived to Israel, and the city clerk asked me, what school do I want to go? I naturally replied, a Jewish school. Next day I find myself in a religious Orthodox Israeli school. Yeah. Anyhow, and then they discovered I study Hebrew a bit. So they sent me, I think I was in Israel 10 days, that was literally my second. They sent me to Chidon HaTanach, the Bible quiz, which is a big deal in Israel. I got an invitation saying that it will be held in Jerusalem, and the prizes will be given by the Minister of Education, I think the president back then. So I was supposed to arrive to the school, in a Jewish religious school. You started the day with Shacharit, right, with a prayer. And from then, a teacher will accompany me and we'll go with a special taxi from Ramat Gan to Jerusalem. So that morning, I put my special, three-piece suit, my special glasses, and went to my Israeli Orthodox school. I don't think anyone was able to daven that morning. At the beginning, they looked at me as almost I was an alien, and then they laughed really hard. And by the end of the prayer, a friend, well, he's still a friend of mine, Avishai, approached, probably feeling bad for laughing, said, listen, I'm sorry we laughed. But you have to understand, the Israelis, they don't dress up like that. And I did look right back at him and said, well, now I'm an Israeli, and this is the way I dress. The end of first story. Now, I'd love to leave it like that's not the special glasses, that's the ordinary one. This is me and my baby sister 1 week before we left Ukraine, Soviet Union. There are two things I'd like to stress out. 8 minutes left. Notice how 11-year-old kid doesn't need any approval from any gatekeepers. It was clear to me that I'm home. And second thing, not only that I felt that sense of belonging, I felt that I'm allowed to do things differently. Let's move to the second story. You tell him. The year is 2010. The place is St. Petersburg, much easier to pronounce. Beautiful city. This is a fourth year of Shlichut, right? I was a Jewish agency representative, head of education department, which was remarkable. I was, so young and responsible for 5-day schools, I think 12. There was Sunday schools and 27 Hebrew ulpans. And the jewel of the crown were the winter and the summer camps. Hundreds of kids going to this sophisticated, nuanced, immersive experience of Jewish life. And so that was the last year, the fourth year, the last summer camp. Every time, there's kids who are late, so I released all the buses, stayed with the last one, and I saw from a distance a dad with his son running, and they're late, and they were, honestly apologizing, saying, I'm so sorry. And the kid ran up, the dad threw the bag in the bus and came to me and said, listen, we were in such a hurry, and we really apologize, and you probably understand, we didn't have the time, so please, you tell him. Now, I thought I knew what he was talking about, but I had to be sure, so I asked, shall I tell him what? And he replied, well, you tell him he's Jewish. The end of second story. Now, notice that 20 years between me, 11-year-old kid, saying, well, now I'm an Israeli and I'm a Jew, to a 16-year-old kid going to a Jewish agency summer camp, not knowing he's Jewish. Now, this could be a great opportunity for educational conversation. How do you create a space that allows people to explore their own identity? And maybe switch from them to us, the Jews? And how do you create an educational process that allows someone to choose between two grandmothers? One who takes him on Friday night to a synagogue, and the other who takes him on Sunday morning to a church. It's a good thing that there's no schedule clash. But that's the work that we did, and we don't have enough time to talk about, but that's what I love about honest education. And it also opens an opportunity for us to look at who are the Russian speakers in Israel. Yeah, I'll go one back. This is Zoe Cherkassky, an Israeli painter, also from what we call Generation 1.5. Have you ever heard this term, Generation 1.5? It's an American sociological term suggesting that, how many of you, your parents, weren't born when you currently live? How many of you, your grandparents weren't born when you currently live? Oh, wow. Amazing. I think if you ask your siblings, if you still can, why did they move? Why did they migrate? Usually people say, well, raди детей, right, for the sake of the kids. Because, the first generation of any immigration pays the highest price. Social status, economical, cultural, the accent always remains, whether you hear it or not. But the kids, they will be fine, right? They will be American, Australian, British, Israeli. And American Sociological Society discovered through years of research that when you move a country, and we move between culture, when you're still in the primary school age, you're not exactly second generation. You're generation 1.5, right? I am an Israeli. Hebrew is my home. But my name is Vadim, and I insist that my daughter speaks Russian. So yeah, this picture, he calls it new victims. Yeah, bad illustration for Aliyah conversation, but yes. So the last story. Before I move to the last story, I do want to look at the two first stories I shared with you and say, the Russian speakers in Israel, we are 1.5 million, 20% of the Jewish population of Israel. And when speaking about minorities, many times overlooked. And I find that the modes of engagement and the deep and unique, I would say, Jewish identity of Soviet Jewry, former Soviet Jewry, is extremely important not only for better understanding Israeli society and global Jewry, but I think it's extremely relevant for the younger generation and what we think and how we imagine Jewish future. But that's another conversation maybe for another time. The last story. What's the time in Australia? All right, so the year is 2023. To be more precise, the Musaf of Yom Kippur, and the place is the Choral Synagogue next to my house in Ramat Gan. Now, I take my high holidays prayer very seriously, so also my talis has, the silver embroidery and the sticks that hold them together. And there's a tradition, the moment when you open the Aron until you hear the shofar blows, you stand and you're not supposed to speak. And so I'm davening and I'm praying, and after almost 24 hours of fasting. Oh yes, the exact opposite of feast. Thank you. Thank you. And this gentleman in front of me turned and asked something, and I showed that I apologized that I'm not speaking, and he realized that this is a very observant person. So by the end of the prayer, he approached to me, and sometimes when you see, sorry boys, straight men trying to pay compliment to another guy, you feel the danger in the air. So in a way, he went for the safer, and the safest things, if you compliment a tie or a watch, then use no homo zone. All right. So he was, and I literally was, do you see the watch? It's almost like a wall clock, but with identity crisis, so it's on my wrist. So oh, that's a very good, what a wonderful. And I don't know, my mind slipped, and I told him, yes, because I travel a lot, and my husband travels a lot, and well, now he's in Australia, and our daughter, so there are literally 3 time zones, etc. And then I looked back at him, and the guy literally changed colors. And his eyes went from side to side. He had no idea what to say. So the only thing he said, well, so what's the time in Australia? And I share this story because zooming out from the personal, 3 stories I want to share with you because, stories matter, right? But when we zoom out and we look into the structure, the fragile structure of Israeli society, we find almost endless subcultures and groups, minorities, each and every one of them feeling discriminated, alienated, experiences prejudice and borderline racism. And one would assume that when you suffer from prejudice it's almost immune, right? But the truth of the matter that every subculture suffers from, this sort of prejudice and borderline racism, do the same to the other groups. Right, so in a way, if you read in Russian-speaking newspaper what, is written or said about, LGBTQ or the Mizrahi or the Arabs or the Haredim, or you go to Haredi press and, yes, I know the time up, give me another minute. So in a way, when I was thinking about this opportunity of amendment, of making a tikkun for something that's broken, and that's the one question I yet have an answer to. I'm very happy and proud that Israeli society moved and made that paradigm shift from the melting pot, this understanding that all of us should, come together and create this, utopian new Homo sapiens, the Zionist, which I will be talking a bit in my next lecture. This is a product placement. And then we move to this multicultural paradigm, which is wonderful. I can celebrate my, Novi God on New Year's Eve, and my Ethiopian friends celebrate in Sigd, and Moroccan Mimuna, in Eid al-Banat, but at this point, I ask myself, are there still things we can celebrate and moments that we can share pain and joy together? What connects us still as Israelis? As I started by saying that, I was born in a country no longer exists, and understanding how horrible this year was, and this perhaps is our darkest hour. And with God's help, we will be able to end this war and then be able to find answers to the questions of Israeli future and what and how the different minorities of the multiculturalism, what's the next step. But I do want to wish us all that we won't be defeated by the probable, but rather find strength and inspiration in the possible, and hold very strong to the belief that whatever is broken can be repaired. And then, Od lo avda tikvatenu, and then our hope is not lost. Chag Sameach.
Thank you very much, Vadim. And in case you hadn't guessed, I should have said that you're training to become a rabbi with the Hartman Institute. Is that right? And I hope one day you'll come and preach here when you have your smicha. You've led us very beautifully from your talk, My Roots in Two Disparate Landscapes, Minorities in Israel, to Magain's talk, which is entitled Creating Hope. We didn't plan it in this way, but I think you've taken us to the point where I welcome Magain to the bima.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. It's nice. I know some of the faces already. So, first of all, thank you, Vadim. I was fascinated by the Russian immigration into Israel to the extent that the vast majority of my time in university, I was practicing Russian verbs, and we can practice my Russian later. There's a few things I want to say, but maybe just relating to what Vadim was saying before, it's having lived here now. I live in London with my family and 3 kids for the last 10 years. And the first time Adam, my eldest, is now 7, the first time he made fun of my accent, I realized I'm an immigrant. that was like a moment of realization for me. Okay, so thank you, Rabbi Alexandra. I'll start with what happened in October 7th very briefly, and then a bit about what I've been doing since. I think it really fits the idea of Tikkun Olam that we're mentioning today. And also, Shavuot is very much an agricultural holiday. So in places like where I grew up, I was born on a kibbutz, but then we moved to a moshav, which is an easy way to explain is that a kibbutz is a socialist community and a moshav is a social community. But they're both farming communities, agricultural communities, or at least that's part of what the people in the community do. And my dad was a farmer and agronomist. That was his life. And so Shavuot for us would be a special occasion. Usually in the village, people would bring their agricultural produce. So in the moshav, it would be tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers and all kinds of lettuce, and watermelons, various kinds of things. And you'd also bring like the newborn babies. So that's kind of like the celebration of the next generation. And Shavuot was always a happy holiday for us. And my family met in Israel today. I'm the youngest of 5 siblings, and I really miss them today. So it's an opportunity for me to bring them with us here. So very, very briefly, on October 7th, I woke up in the morning. There's a 2-hour time gap between Israel and London. Started getting messages in the family WhatsApp group, and then later in my high school classmates group, people who now live in all the places you now are very familiar with, like Faraza, Nahal Oz, and quite quickly we managed to get one message from my parents saying that they're in their safe room, that they can hear some gunshots, and that was the last message we got from them. And we were hoping that just like the mobile network is down, that there's something. It was hard to imagine that the extent that what is happening is really what happened, because it's so horrible and unimaginable. So we didn't imagine that this is what is happening. But getting the messages from my friends living in the other communities, we realized that it's big. So there's something really terrible going on. And a few hours later, we managed to get in touch with one of the neighbors of my parents, and realized that it's unlikely that they survived. What happened in Netiva Asara, that's the village where I'm from, is that Hamas terrorists use motorized parachutes to fly over the wall. There's quite a high wall between the village and the Gaza Strip where I live. They flew over the wall, and in an hour murdered 20 people in the community. And unlike other places, like it wasn't many terrorists that conquered the village. They came in, and one was shot dead in the village, but 2 actually managed to escape. So this is what happened on the day. On October 8th, the next day, I knew I have to be in Israel with my siblings, so somehow managed to find a flight, and I was on one of the I think first flights after what happened that flew into Israel, and spent the Shiva with my siblings in my sister's place in a moshav near Binyamina. It's called Aviel. was a very special shiva for a few reasons. One was that it was impossible to have funerals so early, because some of the bodies were not still with the families, or it was impossible to use the cemeteries in the villages, so people were holding off. My family was quite creative, and that's for my next session about religious laws. We follow what we feel is right. So we decided we're going to have the Shiva, even though we didn't have a funeral. Also related to the fact that the house burned down, so we weren't sure when exactly we will be able to have a funeral. And so we started the Shiva on October 8th. And because we were the first family from the village, but also from the area almost, to have a Shiva, everyone came to us. And so we found ourselves sitting with people who lost other family members, children, parents, brothers, husbands, wives, who came to us. And alongside that, many of my parents and our family and acquaintances, among them, many from the Bedouin community, who my father had excellent relationships with around his work, but also just friendships. And there's a particular family that we're very much in close contact. And from that, the El Zayadna family, and from their extended family, there were actually 4 hostages, and 1 person was murdered on the day. And I think that sometimes it's not mentioned that much in the news, that some of the people who lost their lives on October 7th were Muslims, citizens of Israel, and even taken hostages. 2 are still hostages, and so some of them came to be with us. Alongside, my brother has a business in Nazareth, in the old city of Nazareth. And Nazareth is the largest Arab city in Israel. So we had many friends from Nazareth coming over to the Shiva, and so you can imagine this really insane mix, which is like Israeli society. Thousands of people over the 7th day coming to the Shiva, and we really felt the love and the support, but also for us it felt how these were our parents. It's like I'm mentioning now that this person was a Bedouin, or this person was settler or whatever, but for my parents really didn't care. They really saw people as human beings. It didn't matter to them what's the group identity someone is coming from. For them, it was really, are you an honest, caring person? Then our house and our hearts are open. And so they had many friends and acquaintances from the very, very different communities. And I'm not taking the time, so you tell me. And so the last day of the Shiva, everyone left. We were left just the five of us, the 5 siblings, my brother and 3 sisters. And we had a few things we had to go through, kind of a list of decisions we have to make. And one of the top things on the list was we realized we're going to get a lot of media attention, partly because of my brother's business. He had good relationships with journalists, but also we had some journalists already coming to the Shiva, so we realized we're going to get a lot of media attention. And we also started hearing people calling for revenge. So whether it was on the media or on social media or just to our face, people were talking about revenge. And we immediately felt that this would be completely against what our parents believed in. And we kind of decided together, the 5 siblings, that we want to bring up a different voice. We want to say, this is not the legacy of our parents. Our parents wouldn't want revenge. They would want people to have secure, safe lives. Maybe that means having the military, but definitely not in a vengeful way. And so that's kind of the message we decided to get out. And we didn't realize how, the media storm, how intense it's going to be. So still today, it's, among the 5 siblings, I'm sure we have at least 4 or 5 interviews every week. And so it was nice to see that people are actually thirsty for this kind of a bit more, I would say, sane message. But bringing that voice out, and also for me here in the UK, also I started getting in touch by other people. So Yachad was an organization that I'm also wearing their hat today a bit. That is an organization that's working within the Jewish community for working towards a political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So together with them, I started doing some things here, including having me speak to you guys today, but also work in Parliament. So I've been meeting quite a lot of politicians, work in universities and schools, and many of those sessions, and some can vouch for what I'm saying here, are with a Palestinian partner, especially Hamza Awaude, who is a Ramallah-based friend, but also others, and we're trying to stand together and model the kind of future that we would like to see in Israel-Palestine. And those have been really powerful moments in universities, in schools, and also just out in the streets. We've done a few vigils with thousands of people in participation. So that's the kind of work I've been involved in now. And maybe just to add a sentence, I was asking myself, I'm quite a reflective person. I think Vadim we can relate on that. I was asking myself, I basically quit my job, but not only me, 4 out of the 5 siblings quit their job. And this is what we're doing now. And I asked myself and my siblings, we thought about it, why? Why are we feeling so, why is it so important for us at this moment, in this very dark time, to be so outspoken? And I think it's a combination of 2 things that maybe are similar. One is this really the sense, like I mentioned at the end of the Shiva, we felt as if someone is hijacking our pain for their own political agenda. And I think this is something that sadly is happening for many, and I would say on both sides. That people are in real pain, and there's someone else who's just using that pain for their own, to push their own messages, to push their own agenda, and for me, in a way that just creates more pain. So it was important for us to do the best we can in order to break that kind of cycle, to say, oh, yes, we are in pain, we are angry, we are, but revenge is just going to lead to more pain. And the second thing, which I think is relevant, is also a slightly more positive way. It's just at the moment, it's part of personally my my way of dealing with the trauma is find meaning. So find something that to do that I find meaningful. And I think this is true for my siblings. So we do slightly different things, but we're all engaged in work that we find very meaningful. And I think that's something that again brings me here today. But even on days where I'm doing 3 of these sessions to school kids in a school in London where they're maybe not as attentive as you guys, I find it very meaningful. And I think that's something that gives me strength so thank you for helping me deal with my issues. Should I tell a sentence about what I planned for the session, or?
I'm going to give your title in a minute. I think because of time.
Yep.
Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
The 2 titles.
Perfect.
So I want to say a huge thank you to both of you, Vadim and Magain. Thank you so much for being with us and for sharing so much, both personally and of your own outlooks in this difficult time. So what we're going to do is split into 2 groups. You can choose which group you wish to go to. Vadim's group will be with Rabbi Igor in the Montefiore Hall, and his session is called Reconstructing Body and Soul, 120 Years of Israeli Visual Art. Reconstructing Body and Soul, 120 Years of Israeli Visual Art. Those of you online who wish to go to Vadim's, just stay where you are. You don't need to come out of your Zoom, this Zoom link. It's the same Zoom link. Magain's session is called Harmful Laws, the Role of Reason in the Interpretation of Religious Practice. I think that will chime with many of us. Harmful Laws, the Role of Reason in the Interpretation of Religious Practice. Magain and I will be upstairs in the Assembly Hall. If some very kind person who knows where the Assembly Hall is could lead the way. Thank you, Tiana. It's on the 1st floor. If you need the lift, it's out of that door and turn left and find your way to the Assembly Hall. If you are online and want to come to Magain's session, there is another Zoom link which will have been sent to you if you registered, and which can be found on Shalom LJS as well. I don't know whether, no, it's probably not possible to put it into the chat, but it's on Shalom LJS. So please choose downstairs or upstairs.